From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang, and here are the news. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has advised all government agencies to keep their Christmas and New Year celebrations simple and meaningful in sympathy with Filipinos still recovering from recent disasters. Presidential Communications Office, PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said that the reminder issued in collaboration with the Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, intended to promote empathy and restraint as the country approaches the holiday season. She said the advisory reflects the administration's compassion for communities affected by a series of natural disasters, including recent earthquakes in the Visayas and Mindanao, as well as typhoons that wreaked havoc throughout numerous provinces. The reminder comes as Typhoon Tino, international name Kalmegi, the Philippines' 20th tropical cyclone of the year, slammed Visayas and Mindanao, causing flooding and displacing thousands of families.
Kasunod ng mga sakuna sa bansa, paalala ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. at ng DBM sa ahensya ng pamahalaan, gawing simple ang pagdiriwang ng holiday season. Ilang araw bago magpasko, pinaaalalahanan ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. at ng Department of Budget and Management o DBM sa pangunguna ni Secretary Amenah Pangandaman ang lahat ng ahensya ng pamahalaan na gawing simple at makabuluhan ang Christmas at year-end celebrations. Bahagi ito ng pakiisa ng administrasyon ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. sa taong bayan na nakakaranas ng maraming pagsubok dulot ng sunod-sunod na sakuna sa bansa, mula sa lindol na yumanig sa Visayas at Mindanao at sa mga bagyong tumama sa ilang bahagi ng bansa. Paalala sa mga kawani ng gobyerno, mahalaga ang pagdiriwang ng Pasko na may pag-aalala sa kapwa nating patuloy na bumabangon at nagsisimulang muli mula sa maraming kalamidad na tumama sa bansa. Ang mga hakbang na ito ay kasama sa isang inklusibo at may puso na bagong Pilipinas na tunay na mithiin ng Marcos administration.
Presidential Communications Office, PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Still on Typhoon Tino, government response. The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, continues to deliver relief assistance to affected communities across Visayas and Mindanao following the onslaught of Typhoon Tino. In an interview, Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao, DSWD's Disaster Response Management Group DRMG, said the total humanitarian assistance released by the agency has so far reached over 69.45 million pesos. Through strategically prepositioned relief items under the BBH program, the DSWD has distributed over 123,000 family food bags, or FFPs, to affected individuals. Dumlao said non-food items and ready-to-eat food, or RTEF, boxes have also been provided to families currently staying in evacuation centers. A mobile kitchen deployed in Matnog Port in Sorsogon also provided hot meals to locally stranded individuals, helping ease the hardships faced by affected commuters. Meanwhile, Dumlao expressed condolences to the families of those who lost their lives due to the typhoon. While the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRMC, continues to validate the official death toll, the DSWD assured bereaved families that burial assistance will be provided. While relief operations for Typhoon Tino are ongoing, the DSWD is also monitoring the approaching tropical cyclone, which may intensify into a super typhoon when it enters the Philippine Area of Responsibility, or PAR, over the weekend. The DSWD currently maintains over 2.87 billion pesos in standby funds and stockpiles of food and non-food items across its field offices nationwide.
Dateline Malacañang.
Over 100 families affected by Typhoon Tino have taken temporary shelter at the Bayanihan village in San Remigio, Cebu. Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, or DSUD Secretary Jose Ramon Aliling said the modular housing units, or MHUs, in Barangay Poblacion served as evacuation or shelters during the preemptive evacuation ordered by the local government. He added that the continued operations of the Bayanihan villages is in line with the directive of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. to provide safe and dignified temporary shelters for disaster-affected families. Last month, President Marcos ordered the establishment of Bayanihan Village in Cebu and Davao as part of the government's long-term disaster response program. During his visit to San Remigio, President Marcos inspected the MHUs built for families displaced by the recent 7.4 magnitude earthquake, noting that the modular shelters offer a safer and more comfortable refuge. According to the DSUD, some of the families who evacuated to the MHUs during Tino had previously been staying in tent cities intended for quake victims.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Education, or DepEd, said it needs more than 13 million pesos in response funds for the cleanup and minor repairs of schools damaged by Typhoon Tino International named Calmegi. Based on the latest report from the DepEd Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Service, or DRRMs, a total of 76 schools across Central, Eastern, and Western Visayas, as well as in the Negros Island region, Zamboanga Peninsula, and Northern Mindanao, have reported damages caused by the typhoon. About 11.6 billion pesos is needed for the minor repair of schools, with 49,000 pesos allocated for each damaged classroom. An additional 2.11 million pesos is required for cleanup and clearing operations in the 76 affected schools. DepEd Media Relations Chief Dennis Legaspi said that they will tap their Quick Response Fund, or QRF, to ensure swift repair and recovery of schools in the affected areas. The RRMs logged 64 totally damaged classrooms, 91 classrooms with major damage, and 237 classrooms with minor damage. As of Wednesday, class suspensions have been implemented in 20,681 schools across 10 regions, including Bicol, Mimaropa, and the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, or BARM. Meanwhile, around 522 schools, or a total of 2,507 classrooms, are currently being used as evacuation centers for displaced residents in the affected areas.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Agriculture assured the public that the country's rice supply will remain stable despite the massive devastation brought by Typhoon Tino International named Calmegi across Visayas and Mindanao. In a statement, Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel said initial assessment showed no significant damage to the rice sector in the affected regions. Chu Laurel said farmers in Iloilo, one of the country's top rising producing provinces, had already completed most of their palay, or unhusked rice, harvest before the typhoon hit. However, Chu Laurel warned of possible significant losses in corn production as Typhoon Tino moved across the Visayas and Palawan. As of October 31, data from the DA Disaster Risk Reduction and Management, or DRRM Operations Center, showed that a total of 470,923 hectares of standing crops may be affected by the inclement weather. Of the total, 351,437 hectares are planted with rice and 119,486 hectares with corn. For corn, over 51%, or 60,949 hectares, are in the seedling and vegetative stages. 21% or 25,517 hectares are in the reproductive stage, and 27% or 33,020 hectares are in the maturity stage. To date, the DADRRM Operations Center is continually validating agricultural damage reports in collaboration with the regional and local field offices in affected areas.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, or CAAP, reported minimal damage in some airports in areas struck by Typhoon Tino. In a statement, CAAP Director General Retired Lieutenant General Raul Del Rosario said that based on initial situation reports, several airports experienced minor structural impacts, but no major infrastructure damage or aviation-related incidents were reported. In particular, the San Vicente Airport in Palawan reported flooding at its Aircraft and Rescue and Firefighting or ARFF station, while the roof of the terminal building at the Borongan Airport in Eastern Samar sustained minor damage. The Hilongos Airport in Leyte reported a broken glass door and ceiling damage at its pre-departure area entrances, while the Guian Airport in Eastern Samar reported minor gutter and roof damage. To date, none of the 10 international airports regulated by CAAP has been reported to have been damaged, including the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Mactan Cebu International Airport, Clark International Airport, Davao International Airport, Iloilo International Airport, Calibo International Airport, Puerto Princesa International Airport, Lawag International Airport, Bohol Panglao International Airport, and the Bicol International Airport. Tino has slightly intensified as it continues to move away from northern Palawan and over the West Philippine Sea. Tino brought massive flooding and left a trail of destruction in areas along its path, particularly in Cebu, leaving 66 people dead based on the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council's report.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine National Police Acting Chief Lieutenant General Jose Melencio Nartates Jr. directed all affected police officers and units to intensify search and rescue operations and ensure the speedy, secure distribution of essential relief goods for families and individuals displaced by Typhoon Tino, international name Calmegi. In a statement, Nartates said the order was part of the PNP's multi-pronged response that prioritizes the immediate needs of the public, in line with the directive of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to the police force to extend all forms of assistance to those affected by the typhoon. He said more than 9,000 police personnel and over 300 mobiles were deployed for evacuation, rescue operations, and other humanitarian assistance as Tino devastates parts of the country. He also directed local police officers to conduct an internal assessment to determine the operational impact of the storm on the police force itself. This after the PNP reported that a total of 66 personnel were affected by the typhoon, including 60 uniformed officers and 6 non-uniformed personnel, while 8 police stations were damaged. At a press briefing held at the Camp Crame, PNP spokesperson and Information Chief Brigadier General Randolph Tuaño said coordination continues with the various government agencies for an effective and unified response.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippine Army, or PA, said its rescue units are already on the ground assisting communities hit by Typhoon Tino and supporting other government agencies and disaster response missions. In a statement, PA spokesperson Colonel Louis Damaala said Army teams have helped evacuate around 130,000 persons in cooperation with government and volunteer responders across the Visayas. In Mandaue City, Army personnel together with local government responders were responsible for rescuing 48 individuals from severely flooded villages. As of writing, 1,312 Army troops are deployed in Western Visayas, Central Visayas, Eastern Visayas and Northern Mindanao to assist in various disaster response operations. Another 5,440 soldiers, KAFGU active auxiliaries members, and reservists remain on standby to augment humanitarian assistance and disaster response or other operations across the country. Aside from manpower, the PA has also provided various rescue missions with 34 military trucks to assist in other operations. Demaala said PA responders across the country remain on high alert as another tropical depression is expected to enter the Philippine Area of Responsibility or PAR on Friday. The potential cyclone will be named 1 once it enters PAR, according to the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, Malacañang said there is a need to review the implementation of more than 500 flood control projects in Cebu to ensure their effectiveness and the proper use of government funds. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said that from 2016 to 2022 alone, around 343 flood control projects were implemented, with 2 of them being terminated. Castro noted that under the Marcos administration, there are around 168 flood mitigation projects, with 55 still ongoing. She said the flood control projects implemented under the Duterte administration should have been working by now.
Sa ngayon po, meron po tayong initial data na nakuha mula sa DPWH website. Since 2016 to 2022, lumalabas po na 343 flood control projects ang nagawa. 2 po ang terminated dito. At ito na may makikita niyo po sa DPWH website. At sa panahon po ng 2023 to 2025, meron pong 168. At ang ongoing pa po ang 55. Pero kanina lamang po, bago po tayo sumalang po dito, ay mayroong pinadala po si Sec Vince ng latest data. At yun po ay mayroon pong mga flood control projects, hindi lamang po sa Cebu, kundi sa ibang mga rehiyon, at ipiprint lang po namin at ibibigay po sa inyo.
Castro made a statement following Typhoon Tino, international name Kalmegi, which triggered widespread flooding in Cebu. Cebu Governor Pamela Baricuatro lamented that the province continues to experience extreme flash floods despite the allocation of 26 billion pesos for flood control initiatives. Castro said the palace welcomes any data or information related to the flood control projects that Baricuatro may provide.
Yun din naman po. Yan po ang dahilan kung bakit po nagpapaimbestiga ang Pangulong Marcos Jr. Dahil nakita niya po yung epekto, may mga budget na inilaan para dito pero parang hindi gumagana. Kaya mas maganda po na kung siya man po ay nagagalit, yan din po ang nararamdaman ng Pangulong Marcos Jr. At kung meron po siya pang mga alam, may mga facts, may mga data rin po, si Governor para dito mas na makakatulong sa ating gobyerno para mapanagot ang dapat mapanagot, yan po ay welcome. At hindi lamang po sa panahon ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ng mga flood control projects ang dapat malaman. Dahil lumalabas po kanina yung initial data natin ay 343 flood control projects ang nagawa since 2016 to 2022 sa Cebu. Mula sa 1st District, 2nd District, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th hanggang sa City. So dapat din po itong makita dahil kung meron pong 343 flood control projects noon pa man, dapat po sana ay gumagana ito. So pagtulong-tulungan po natin mahanap ang dapat na papanagot sa mga maanumalyang flood control projects.
Presidential Communications Office, PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has assured assistance to the families of the Philippine Air Force or PAF personnel who perished in a helicopter crash in Agusan del Sur Tuesday. Presidential Communications Office PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro in a press briefing said President Marcos extended his condolences to the families of the PAF personnel who were aboard a helicopter deployed to conduct damage assessment following the onslaught of Typhoon Tino.
Po, alam na po ito ng Pangulo at kanina po ikinausap din po natin ang DND at ito po ang kanilang statement at aking babasahin. The Department of National Defense extends its heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families of the 6 Philippine Air Force pilots and crew of the Super UA that crashed in Agusan del Sur on November 4, 2025. Their dedication to duty and sacrifice will always be remembered, especially as these were made in the service of our fellow Filipinos facing the effects of Typhoon Tino. We pray for their eternal peace and shall extend all available support to their families at this difficult time. Ayon din po sa Pangulo, pinapaabot niya ang kanyang pakikiramay sa pamilya ng mga nasawing mga bayani ng ating bansa at ang lahat ng tulong na nararapat ay dapat na iparating sa mga naapektuhan na pamilya.
Statement on Tuesday, the PAF confirmed that one of its Super Huey helicopters encountered an air mishap near the vicinity of the 60th Infantry Battalion in Agusan del Sur. The ill-fated aircraft, manned by 2 pilots and 4 air crew members, was part of a flight of 4 helicopters that departed from Davao and was en route to Butuan City to conduct a rapid damage assessment and needs analysis mission. The PAF said communication with the helicopter was lost, which immediately prompted the launch of a search and rescue operation. Meanwhile, the Department of Transportation, or DOTR, and the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, or CAAP, extended their condolences and support to the PAF following the deaths of the 6 airmen. Both agencies also assured the public of their commitment to ensure the safety of the country's airspace.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has ordered a probe into the major wastewater spill at the Universal Rubina Corporation URC Bais Distillery in Negros Oriental, with fines and legal action being considered following significant environmental and livelihood damage. During a media briefing in Malacañang, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said that the President was immediately informed of the incident and directed the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, to coordinate with the Philippine Coast Guard and local government units for immediate containment measures. She said the DENR has already met with URC Bais Distillery officials and directed them to handle the incident quickly. To avoid health hazards, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BIFAR, has urged communities affected to temporarily suspend fishing and aquatic product collecting. Castro said that officials are considering charging URC with violating Republic Act, or RA 11038, also known as the Expanded National Integrated Protected Area System, or NIPAS Act, which applies to the Tanyon Strait Protected Seascape near the affected area.
Opo, alam na po ito ng Pangulo, kaya po kumilos agad ang DENR at nagkaroon na po ng pakipag-usap sa Philippine Coast Guard at sa mga LGUs para po sa agarang pagresponde dito at pag-implement po ng containment measures. At nagkaroon na rin po ng pakipag-usap sa URC, Bais Distillery, at kinakailangan po nilang ayusin ito ng maagaran. At nagkaroon na rin po ng pag-uutos ng BIFAR na sa mga kababayan na apektado, no, iwasan muna po ang pangisda, ang pagkolekta ng anumang mga aquatic organisms or seaweeds para po maiwasan po ang hindi magandang epekto nito sa kanilang kalusugan. At pinag-aaralan din po kung dapat nang sampahan ng kaso base po sa RA 11038. Kapag ka po talagang mayroong nalabag na batas, hindi po mag-aatubili ang gobyerno na magsampa po ng kaso.
The palace statement comes following mounting concern in Negros Oriental over the 255,000 cubic meters of wastewater that poured into Bais Bay and other coastal regions when the distillery's lagoon wall fell on October 28. The leak resulted in enormous fish fatalities, pollution, and the displacement of coastal communities and business. The Manhuyod local government has proclaimed a 90-day state of calamity, while the provincial government reports the loss of around 10,000 milkfish fingerlings at their aquaculture complex in Barangay Panambalon. Local politicians have called for accountability and long-term safeguards. Fishermen and villagers have protested outside the URC plant, begging for compensation and prompt aid as the environmental impact spreads throughout Negros Oriental's coastal settlements.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
Dateline Malacañang. From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.